Hi guys, this is Kim from Creative DIY Purpose and welcome. Today I have 4 different upcycled projects for you. We're going to actually do them in sets, and each set will get a different color paint, and then at the end one of each will get the white DIY wax and the other one is going to get the dark DIY wax. And then we have a bonus project. My 9-year-old daughter is going to be joining me for this project. Okay, repurpose project number 1. We're going to repurpose these barbecue sauce bottles with some Waverly mineral chalk paint. All right, so I was going to tie some string around the top and the bottom to cover up the raised lettering and the rim. All right, check that out. Since 1968, that was a good year. All right, so I decided that instead of doing that and trying to cover up that rim, I'm going to go ahead and make some textured paint. So we're going to do half paint and half just regular baking soda, and we're going to stir that in and see how nice and thick it is. And as it sits out, it's going to get thicker. And I only needed 1 coat of this to actually cover up all that raised lettering. Normally when I do the textured paint, I do go ahead and do 2 coats, but for such a small area, it didn't need it. I'm also going to post below for you guys in the description the video I made on how to take this textured paint and do a concrete look on different thrift store finds. And it's a great way to give something that's outdated a fresh new look. All right, and this does not take that long to dry. So as soon as I'm done finishing up the bottom and then going around the top, I'm actually going to go into the graphicsfairy.com and find an image that I want to put on the front, and then save that image, put it into Canva and size it so it's going to wrap around the bottle. And I'm just going to use a regular inkjet printer, take some spray adhesive onto a regular copy paper and wait for a couple minutes so it's not so tacky. And then you smooth on tissue paper and print that design right out. Once you remove the tissue paper, you're going to want to take that matte clear spray and you're going to want to spray the image twice. All right, so now you're going to want to grab some Mod Podge because we're going to go ahead and put it on the bottle on a really thin coat, because the thinner that you can go and the more even, the less chance for bubbles and wrinkles. And I'm fine if it's got some wrinkles. I personally like it, especially when you're putting them on wood or something where you can sand it and get that distressed look. But this actually came out really good. We're going to go for an age look anyway because we're going to be applying white wax to one and dark wax to another. Now that paintbrush is dry and I just am brushing it on all over the outside just to take out any bubbles or creases that I had. All right, so we're going to get this all buttoned up. And then I am going to let it dry for a few hours just so it's easier to handle. I know in the video it makes it look like I head right into applying the white wax on one and the dark on the other. So it is a little deceiving. All right, so with the paintbrush, I'm just going on and using the DIY white wax. Now, so when you do the textured paint, it is very porous, especially since I use chalk paint. So it's really going to absorb that color. So I never show in any of my videos, but when I do buff that wax, it does take, I mean, it's even for a small piece like this, probably 15 to 20 minutes. And sometimes you apply it again in certain areas to get the look that you want. And if it's too dark, you just keep rubbing it back until you get the exact look that you really want. And once it has a chance to cure and sit, the color does lessen a little bit. You can also go ahead and apply clear wax prior to using any colored wax like I have done before when I upcycle tables, just because that will soak into the wood and it makes it a touch easier when you do apply your colored wax to be able to get it the way you want. All right, so we are on to project number 2, ceramic ornaments.
Hi.
And that is Sophia. She picked these ceramic ornaments up. Where'd you get them?
Goodwill.
At Goodwill. She's got the eagle eye when it comes to cute little animals in thrift stores, huh? All right, so what kind of paint did you use?
I used Waverly in the color Silver Lining.
I like how you painted their ears and their nose. What are you doing here?
I am adding the white wax on this one and just applying it everywhere. And I did let it sit on for about a half hour.
Nice.
And now I am adding the dark wax.
Nice. You did a really good job. You don't make a big mess like Mommy makes. And then after you let it sit on for a half hour, what did we go ahead and do?
I buffed it out.
You buffed them out, huh? And we actually used, we upcycled, right? Because we used a pair of your leggings as our buffing cloth. Because they had holes in them, huh?
Yeah.
And there we are. Did you like buffing them out?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? That you can paint something the same, but you get such a different look, huh? Which one do you like best?
I like both of them, honestly.
I love it. You did a very nice job. All right, and for project number 3, we're going to repurpose a set of candle holders. I'm going to be using the Waverly chalk paint in moss. It's a really beautiful green. I did take 3 coats to cover the glass completely. And I'm just going to pick out some random colors of some of the chalk paint and some acrylic from Apple Barrel. Because I picked up that plate, actually 2 of those plates, at a thrift store the other day for $1 each. So I want to try to incorporate those colors and roses down on the candlestick holders because we're going to be making pedestals. All right, so I just took the font from my roses stamps from IOD and just added that to the base. And now I'm just going to pop on some color. I'm trying to match up the greens as best as I can in some of the colors. And in just a bit, I'll show you guys a quick and easy way to do the roses. What's nice about the chalk paint is it makes it really easy to paint on. Okay, so I have paint all over me. So I just took a Q-tip and did a couple dabs of the light pink and the dark pink. And I will blend that in a bit. And then for the bigger roses, I did like a medium pink first and put that down as a base. But for the smaller ones, I just did the dark and then the light and then blended it in. I'm just going to brush on a little vine and a few more leaves. So have you guys ever tried the colored wax? And if you have, you know, which do you prefer? Like the darker wax finish or the white one? Let me know in the comments. Let me know too what projects that you've used them on. Like, do you use them on smalls? Do you use them on glass, furniture? The white I've used quite a few times when I'm refinishing tables. I usually put a few coats of the white wax on top and then brush it back. But I'm really excited because I'm currently refinishing a giant table for my kitchen. We're actually in the process of putting in new floors and painting, and my husband put in a new wall in the kitchen, just a little remodel. But I'm excited because I'm thinking about adding the dark wax to the top of the table. So I'm still on the fence about it. It's definitely going to cover it with wax, but I'm leaning, after doing these projects, really think I'm leaning more towards the dark wax. So I will definitely share that with you guys. So be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss that video and more. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just take a Q-tip and added some acrylic paint along the edges. And once that is dry, it is time to apply the wax. This first candlestick holder is going to get some black wax. And I applied it with a Q-tip just to get down into all of the ridges in there. But my chalk brush would have done a perfectly fine job. I don't know. I guess I just had them right next to me. So once I applied this on, I do let it sit for a few minutes and before I buff it and wipe it back. One of the reasons I love the colored wax so much is after you let it sit, you can go back and add more if you want a deeper, rich look. Or you can even continue to wipe it back a little bit more, but I think that just came out with just enough shadow, and it actually darkened a little bit in the time that it sat there. And now it's time to go ahead and apply it on the white candlestick holder and let it sit there. I think I let them both sit for about a half hour before I wiped them back. And this is just another quick, easy way that you can upcycle and transform just basic, maybe outdated decor and just give it a whole new look. On to project number 4. I got these pieces of scrap wood that were cut off of an old shelf. They are not square, but I wasn't going to mess with it. Figure, heck, it gives it character, and I'm not going to be reselling these. So I'm going to apply a pretty thick coat of Elmer's glue because I want a crackled paint look. And then I took DIY paint, and this is cake batter, and I'm going to apply a pretty thick coat. And you want to apply the paint before the glue dries. You just want to wait till it's not super goopy, but it's still tacky, and then look at the crackle. Okay, so I'll be honest, when I got my hair dryer on here to speed it up and it cracked like that, I'm like, oh no, that's a little too dramatic, but hey, we make it work. Once it's completely dry, I do take it out and hand sand it. All right, I went ahead and picked out one of my favorite verses out of the Bible. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give the edges a worn and tattered look, and then we're going to use that Mod Podge to glue it on. And in the end, you can't really tell that it's even a sheet of paper. But this is another way, guys, that you don't need any expensive equipment. Just a nice inkjet printer. And I will try to actually link mine below. I can't believe that this printer is still kicking out with as much as we've used it. All right, and then I'm just going to measure up the sides just to make sure that it's even. And then I'll go ahead and smooth it on. Now, once I printed this out, I went ahead and used spray sealer so I wouldn't have any problems with the ink smearing. I just sprayed it and then let it dry and air out before I brought it in the house. Usually everything that I do print out that I'm going to be working on, whether I'm going to be decoupaging, doing this technique, or even the water seals, I make sure that I've sprayed them. Especially the water seals, I usually spray them about 3 times. All right, so we've got it glued on. I did go ahead and just kind of dry brush some of the cake batter color on the verse. And now I'm going ahead along the outside with the dark wax. It's definitely going to end up with the aged look. Honestly, at this point, I'm like, oh no, I don't think this is going to turn out. But my greatest tip is just keep going with a project. If you get to that point where you're like, oh my gosh, this is not going to come out. Especially, you know, if you're trying something new, just keep applying color and wiping it back, or applying a wax and wiping it back. And if you're painting, maybe try different shades of paint and wiping it back. Because this does end up, after about a good half hour, I got it where I was pleased with it. And my other tip is when you're using Mod Podge, if it goes on the outside surface where you don't want it, make sure before you go any further that you wipe it off with a damp cloth, or else you'll have the problem that I had up at the very top corner. That's why I'm applying more dark wax, and the same thing happened to me with the bottle. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and apply the white wax. I'm gonna let it sit on here for a while. On both of these signs, I do use a touch of the opposite color wax. Just a little, and it was just to add a little bit more texture and depth, and thankfully it worked. All right, and for project number 5, we're going to give these metal candle holders a new look, and we're going to be using Waverly chalk paint in the color steel and some baking soda. Because this paint is a little bit more watery than the Rust-Oleum chalk paint, I'm going to go ahead and do a 50-50. So you're going to use half of the paint and half of the baking soda. All right, and it's, oh my gosh, it applies so easy and so smooth, and it dried super fast. So we're just going to apply that gray to both of them and let them dry. And then we're going to go ahead and apply the white wax to one and the dark to another. So because of the texture, it is a little bit of a challenge to go ahead and try to buff the wax. Just takes a few extra minutes and some patience and possibly another cup of coffee. All right, so comment below, let me know which do you prefer, the darker finish or the lighter finish. And let me know which project today was your favorite. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And you guys have a super blessed week, and I will see you next week.